recording. Welcome. Today we'll be discussing Microsoft Copilot for Security as part of our Copilot Getting Started series. If you haven't seen the previous Getting Started office hours, you need to check them out, and we have recordings of them all. So we now have done 3 office hours on topics like demystifying Microsoft Copilot, securing Copilot deployment with Purview and SharePoint Premium, and getting started with Copilot Studio, unleashing the power of conversational AI. But for today, we're only going to be talking about Copilot for Security, and I'm really excited about the potential of this product since its announcement on April 1st. So with me today is Karsten Du. Karsten has been in the industry for nearly 30 years and has worked with Microsoft products since 1994. He was part of enabling cloud services in the late 90s with an ASP in Norway before he moved to the US in 2000. In 2006, Karsten joined Planet Technologies as a consultant and has worn several hats serving customers all over the US. He spent the last decade around the Microsoft Cloud offerings with an emphasis on teaching customers the cloud platform along with ongoing projects. Thanks, Karsten, for joining us and being back on the program today. Well, we have a full agenda, so let's go ahead and get started. Our agenda today consists of an overview of what Copilot for Security is and isn't. Then we'll get into scenarios to use Copilot for Security, then deployment and plugins, and of course, everyone's favorite topic, cost, and how to use compute units to answer your questions. For experience, we will talk about the different ways to use the solution and then go into a demo of how to work an incident without Copilot for Security and then with Copilot for Security. I think you'll find this really interesting, so make sure you stick around. And finally, we have additional considerations to think about when using Copilot for Security. And of course, we will save time at the end for questions and feedback. With that, I'm going to turn this over now to Karsten to tell us more about Microsoft Copilot for Security. Karsten, it's all yours.
Thank you, Ken. Welcome, everyone. So we're going to talk about Microsoft Copilot for Security, that we also call Security Copilot in this presentation. We're going to, as Ken said, we're going to look at a little bit what this is, how it works, and how we can use it, and how we can manage it. So first of all, using AI in to support us around security context is of course a pretty significant step, and what we experience when we look into the AI capabilities at our fingertips now is that we do get answers very quickly, and the responses are very timely, and it accelerates several things in a SOC around security analysis. So the response time to get to the bottom of incidents and the vast amount of alerts that we might be dealing with is greatly improved. So the time saver here is a big takeaway using Security Copilot.
Yeah, and this is more important now than ever. It's so hard to get skillful security talent, right, Karsten?
Yeah, we're in the middle of what's called the gray tsunami.
That's right.
Which it's a funny mention of there's a lot of security talent out there that are in the middle of retiring. So this is not looking any easier going forward.
Excellent.
So forward with this, Security Copilot is built using the OpenAI's large language model. And it is built at hyperscale in the IA infrastructure in Microsoft, of course. It's paired with Microsoft Security's own capabilities and knowledge, what they have gained over years working in this space. And of course, the language model itself is trained with security-specific skills. Microsoft is also pairing this with insight into the very large amount of security signals that Microsoft have visibility to. So 65 trillion signals daily is a pretty significant learning area for a model like this. And then it's integrated with what we call end-to-end security tooling. So Sentinel, XDR, Defender for Cloud, Defender for Endpoint, and we're going to look a little bit more into that, what families we are spanning across here. So it's a highly specialized model for security investigation and security data mining.
Excellent. And Microsoft's in a really great position here to integrate all these capabilities together tied to your specific infrastructure. So that's an incredible story there.
Yep. So before we get more into Security Copilot itself, your data is your data, and that means your prompt, your responses. If you get any recommendations or mentions out of Security Copilot, this data is all yours. And this data is also not used to train the foundation AI model. So some of the result and some of the patterns that we use might be leveraged. If I come up with something that is very revealing, maybe I also comment to Microsoft about this within Security Copilot. That is not necessarily called training, it's more an experience. But if I'm sitting with Security Copilot and I'm using it, that my sessions are not being used for anything outside of my tenant. And this data is protected in the most sophisticated ways. The data is running in secure enclaves and separate networks and are isolated from anything else in the planet, including Microsoft tenants or other customers.
So with that said, Carson, where exactly is this data stored?
So that's a great question. You may or may not know. So when you create an Azure tenant or an Office 365 tenant, that tenant is geolocated somewhere. And with that geolocation, this is the root of your tenancy, and within that tenancy is where your data is stored. So it's stored within the governance of your own tenant. You can't access this data. In other words, there isn't an interface to access the data. But I'll show you something in Security Copilot, an example of the data that you can see using the tool itself.
Excellent, excellent. All right. So let's talk a little bit about some of these integrations. There's one on here that I don't think people probably have heard of, or they're just getting familiar with Microsoft Priva, but I'll let you go ahead and talk about the integrations here.
Yeah. So when we say integration into 6 product families, that means that there are synergies or signals or visibility in between Security Copilot and these product families, spanning Defender, as I mentioned, Sentinel, Microsoft Entra, formerly Azure Active Directory, Microsoft Intune, Microsoft Purview, and Microsoft Priva. Just a mention for Microsoft Purview. For those of you that knows Purview, this is for the compliance side of Purview only. And the visibility is set up with the plugins, or they are sometimes also referred to as connectors. Beyond the product family is the Microsoft Security Experts. So we don't have a plugin per se into the Microsoft Security Experts, which is really a unique unit within Microsoft that are providing security expertise when needed. They also contribute to the content that you can find when you're using Security Copilot.
Gotcha. Excellent.
So on this next section here, this is a little bit about how Microsoft Copilot for Security actually works. And you see at the center here, the Microsoft Security Copilot is your interface per se, and it can be interfaced, for example, through Microsoft Defender XDR. So the flow of this, and there's an important parameter here that helps understanding why Security Copilot works differently than just a normal large language model. So a user prompt comes in there at number 1, and you see the second step here is grounding. Now, the grounding is the process in AI where we are focusing in on what it is that we are actually having a conversation with the AI about. So if I'm asking something in a prompt that should be a Sentinel topic, now the Security Copilot is going to ground that and make sure that we are using the connected capability with Microsoft Sentinel. Then that becomes number 3 in this step, where now the modified prompt is now sent into the large language model on the back end that will respond with something, which is again grounded. And it's again sent back, making sure that the response from the LLM itself actually carries on the intent from the initial prompt. In other words, we go back to the grounding and make sure that this makes sense also from a Microsoft Sentinel perspective.
Excellent, excellent. Let's talk about some of these scenarios, how it's used.
Yeah. So this slide and the next slide talks about the value add of Security Copilot. Using Copilot for incident response becomes a natural first choice here, where we can detect, estimate, and receive guidance for how to behave, what to do next, how to verify um, data around the incident itself. Threat hunting is where you can use the AI capabilities of Security Copilot to dig deeper, ask more, and I'll talk a little bit about the effective prompting here in a second. I don't think we have a slide for prompts itself, Ken, but I'll bring it up when I show
Fantastic.
Security Copilot. The security reports, this is probably one of my favorites when I saw it the first time. I realized that there was a very quick way of creating a summarization of an event, an incident, or any threat. And I can tell Security Copilot what to do with that report. I can have the report just come out as a canned piece of verbiage, or I can ask Copilot to format it for my manager, for example. And in other words, I can ask it to use more natural language, maybe leave out some of the technical jargon that often goes into the security response work.
And then was this part of that email, how it can actually create an email and send it back out to?
Yeah, I will show that.
Okay, you're gonna show that.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. That was pretty neat.
Yep. This one, I should probably have been on the first slide because the reverse engineering is probably, or maybe arguably, the most significant capability when I looked at it. And I'm, of course, coming at this from my experience. I'm not a SOC analyst. I'm also not a developer. I've been a Microsoft consultant all my career. So being able to have a tool at my fingertips that can tell me what is this malware about. I have some piece of code. It was sent to someone in an email or uploaded on a website. It's flagged as malware or flagged as a risk. How can I understand what it does without being a developer, without reading Python or whatever script was used to create that? And I can ask Security Copilot to decipher this for me and very quickly extract what is the risk and maybe also find out what is the associated risk. So some of the threats out there is about remote access and remote control, and that means there is an egress, or there is a communication going back out from the threat or the executable, whatever it's running somewhere. And getting insight to that helps me, without being a SOC expert, take action, maybe block that egress or block certain domains. So it's very powerful. So one of my favorites in this collection of abilities here. The guided response is is a time saver that it was kind of amusing. First time I saw this, I'm going to show you actually this particular event, and I'll show you how Security Copilot actually automatically creates a guided response. It's a powerful little step here. And the last one, not to forget, that we can have summaries created for target audience. It can be for other technologists. I can share incidents or summaries. We can also have Security Copilot create an executive summary for me, which is another huge time saver.
Awesome.
So to get this started, there is a deployment, and this deployment is very, very, very simple. The requirement is, of course, that you have a commercial Office 365 tenant with a commercial Azure tenant enabled. So we need to operate inside of Azure. Once we have an Azure environment, we can go to the marketplace and we can deploy Microsoft Copilot for security from the marketplace. It has a quick little install. I want to say that the Copilot install takes less than 10 minutes. And as soon as that has completed, you are prompted to go to the Security Copilot URL and log in. If you go to the next slide, I'm also going to show this a little bit in the demo here. This is the second step of configuring Copilot in the environment. And these are the plugins, in other words, or you can call them connectors, that provides the abilities for Security Copilot to see data from these sources. So if we talk about Microsoft Entra, for example, now I can see users, alerts, access reviews, risky services, for example, from Microsoft Entra. So I can use Security Copilot to correlate across all of these areas that I have plugged in. In other words, giving Security Copilot access to. I think this is a good place, Ken. I know we're going to talk a little bit about access control to bring up.
Yep.
Yeah.
So talk to us about what's the permission model? How does it work with Security for Copilot? Like what role-based access control or delegation features does Copilot for Security have? And are the permissions kept in Copilot for Security aligned to the user permission and configurations of other solutions, like if you're using other products?
So
how does that work?
No, that's a great question. And so the permission model inside of Security Copilot has a owner and a contributor level. The difference is that the owner can manage cost, where the contributor cannot. Other than that, those are the two simplistic levels inside of the solution itself. But Microsoft Security Copilot is using OBO authentication, and that means on behalf of. So that makes Security Copilot planning a little bit more complex than many other tools. Because if you look at the list of plugins here, if I'm running a governed organization, and with governed, I mean if areas of responsibilities are broken down into roles,
Yep.
We might have some roadblocks in the permissions that are given across the services to be able to see or read the data. So in a, let's say a smaller organization, like in my test environment that I'm going to use for the demo, I'm a global administrator. I'm also a security administrator. So because I have those two roles, there is nothing in that environment that is hidden from me once I start looking at it using Security Copilot and turn on the plugins.
Mm.
So
So
there is a little bit of a planning that needs to go in place when we look at who's going to use the Security Copilot and what is it they can and cannot see.
Yeah, that's a great point. I can think of like one of my time in North Carolina when we scoped down every agency by e-discovery, by their, their agency scope. So from an e-compliance standpoint. So yeah, it sounds like this is going to have like Uber access to everything, huh?
It will.
Yeah.
Again, though, it's based on the onlooker to
Yeah, yeah.
use an
The
Einstein
personality.
expression.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So it's impersonating your abilities. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Excellent. So definitely some things to think about there on configuration and governance. Absolutely. So let's talk
Yeah.
about cost. This is probably everybody's favorite topic, and I know you learned a bunch of things during this process here. So let's talk about cost.
Okay. So cost is managed by something called a security compute unit. And the minimum compute unit you can configure, you can't set this to 0, is one compute unit. And this compute unit is reflective of the cost of the computation that you are imposing, right? When you're doing certain actions inside of Security Copilot. I've yet to find a correlation between what if if I ask Security Copilot how many incidents there is in Sentinel, what is the actual cost?
Right.
I don't think there will ever be a table like that. Your experience over time will give you that indication. So it should be a pretty simple, low level or basic type of query. But the idea is that this covers for the computational cost. So it means though that if you're running with 1 unit per hour in this configuration, the basic configuration here, you have 24 of these units available to you in a day, right? Or as I use in the example on the slide here, you get 72 over 1 day if you're using 3 compute units. Now, the 3 compute units is up there because that is the recommendation from Microsoft, that you run with 3 compute units. Now, this can be adjusted up and down in real time and take immediate effect. So if there is something happening in your environment and there is more users maybe using this tool at the same time, you can increase the units, and you can dial it back once you don't. Once you see the activity kind of go down. The owner is the only one that can change the compute unit, as I said. And then the last thing here, the behavior of the compute unit, if you're running out of them, is that you will get a message saying that you have run out of compute unit abilities. There is some overage allowed, so it's not like a full cut. You get a warning when you get towards the limit. And as I said, you can increase it in real time, and it takes immediately effect. I played around with that part, so it works pretty well. So I want to mention one thing, because we all looked at this, and yeah, it makes sense if you're, let's say, 2 or 3 people in a SOC and you use this tool frequently. So those 3 compute units probably make sense to have available when you are in your normal day-to-day operation. Now, that is going to result in what, $8,600 or something cost a month. But you can dial these back. You can do it manually, or you can use Logic apps to actually put this back to 1. So, for example, you can do that over weekends. You can do it at nights. Just to there is some flexibility in that. So you don't have to. You do not want to set it to a higher value and leave it there because this is real cost. It goes directly to your billing.
Yeah, so there's definitely some trial and error, right? Because I mean, each compute unit has so much processing. So the response, is it directly related to response time on the queries that you're doing?
No, it's not.
It's not. Okay, interesting.
Yeah. So what you will see, we're gonna kick something off here in the demo.
Okay.
Crossing my fingers since it's a demo. You will see that some of this computational power, it's really based on what is it using, based on what did you ask it to do, right? So if you're asking it to do something that crosses several plugins, of course that's more computational requirements.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. And these compute units don't roll over, so they're kind of a use it or lose it in 24 hours, right?
I do not have a confirmed answer to that.
Yeah, I know that was something that, yeah.
In my testing, since I'm running this in a Planet provided lab environment, I have not let it run for a long time at a time. Just simply to keep our own development costs down
Sure.
while we're working on this.
Okay. All right. I think that's it about cost, right? Is there anything else to talk about cost before we move on? Okay.
I think that covers it.
Let's move on to the different experiences with here, standalone versus embedded. Let's talk about that.
Yes. So Security Copilot has 2 experiences. I talked about a little bit. The Security Copilot.microsoft.com is the standalone experience. I'm going to show you that in a second here. And then there is the embedded experience. So in several of the product families that we integrate with, like for example XDR, Security Copilot is integrated in that experience. So that provides more than one experience. So it's not only the AI interface itself or the AI prompt interface itself.
Gotcha. So then here's some of the embedded, right?
Yeah, so this is some of the abilities that we have across the platform here. So I'm just gonna pick a few here. I'm not gonna read all of these. For example, the guided response in XDR is, you'll see this here in a second here. Antra, you can investigate risky users from within Antra using Copilot. In Intune, I can troubleshoot devices, for example. And again, Security Copilot is available in Intune, and it can help me troubleshoot devices, can help me create queries to get all the information about the devices, their compliance status, and whatnot. In Purview, for example, I can look at insider risk activities and see what's going on there. And lastly here, I can use Defender threat intelligence with Security Copilot. And what I can do, I can go into an incident. I can ask Security Copilot to also showcase what threat intelligence information it can provide related to an incident. And we can get elaboration on the threat intel itself.
Okay. Now the standalone experience.
Yeah, so as I just mentioned, this is the standalone experience. We're gonna pivot from this and into the demo here in a few seconds. So come back to this. One thing before we leave this slide is, for example, this standalone experience here. I'm looking at something that is related to a security incident. And I get a suggestion here to go hunt in Microsoft 365 Defender or Defender XDR. And that is a direct link into security.microsoft.com or Defender XDR.
Gotcha. We're gonna talk about redirect before you go to the demo.
Yes. So redirects is I can be in Security Copilot, and it can take me directly into Sentinel, like this example shows me. And I think there is one little more kind of overview here. This is what it looks like from Defender XDR, where you see Copilot being embedded in the interface of XDR. All right, so before we leave this, actually, I'll take over the share, Ken. So I'm going to take you straight into Security Copilot. And what you see here on my screen is this is my screen, my prompt, and things that I've been looking at up top here. So I'm just going to show you. Thank you. Just going to really quick show you the interface of Security Copilot itself. So the home was where I landed. My sessions is the library of things that I have been working on in this part of Copilot. But this also is where I mentioned earlier the data that we have. Ken, we talked about where you asked where it's resided. Yeah. So the data around here, all this data, the queries themselves and the results, the summaries, the guided responses, whatnot, this is all stored in my tenant. And it's my private data. And I can literally remove the Copilot for security from my Azure environment and re-enable it within 30 days, and all this will be available to me. So that's what I meant when I said give the visibility to this Security Copilot data.
Gotcha.
Yeah. This data is governed and managed by Microsoft on the back end. It's even backed up to create some persistence behind this data. And it's stored for 30 days. So after 30 days, it will start rolling off, unless you pin it or save it. And that's an ability you have in here. The prompt book library. So this is this is a brand new install that you're looking at. It's only a few days old, so there's not a lot in here. So these are the prompt books, which are really a collection of predefined prompts. So if I open, for example, the Microsoft Sentinel incident investigation, it will contain, as you see here, 7 unique prompts to take me through the steps of doing an incident investigation that involves Sentinel. I talked about the owner settings. So I'm the owner in here. I can switch owners, and I can add contributors. And contributors, as I said, they are not able to manage the use. In other words, the compute units. So right ahead of this demo here, I went ahead and changed my compute units to 3 per hour, just following the standing recommendation from Microsoft. And I also want to show you here, I can go ahead and change that in real time. And now I'm back to the 1 compute unit. So to curb your cost or something you might want to do in slower period in using this. And I think I'm going to go back to my session here. I'm going to open a new session. I'm going to show you, there's a good little nugget in here that shows a little bit of aid getting started. But also here's the system capabilities. And the first time I saw this is where you get to the bottom of what Security Copilot currently can do. And I'm saying currently because this is under development, and it will keep growing. It became GA April 1st, so it's a fairly young product, of course. So if you look down the list here, you'll see it has a lot of capabilities already and announced here. So this is an area that I'm gonna keep an eye on. I want to see these capabilities, the baked in or native capabilities around Security Copilot. So it's a fairly long list of all this. So let me go into a session here. I'm going to open a new session, and I'm going to. Oh, I want to show you one more thing before I do that. This is my plugins, and these are my data sources for me. Since I'm an owner, when I configure this the first time, this is what becomes available for the other users of this Security Copilot. Now, the contributors, both owners and contributors, they can turn on or off these insights. So that's very, very quickly manageable, and this is instantly available. There's no setup involved. This is natively available. Closing that up. So I'm gonna talk. I know we're running short on time. I can talk about this for days. I'm going to show you all just a very little simple image here. I'll pull it out here. So when working with Security Copilot, you want to be as natural as possible. It's actually going to help you. Try not to get too technical. If you're already a full-grown SOC analyst, you're probably going to ask questions that Copilot is going to have trouble deciphering. And I'm not saying that in a negative way. So using natural language, asking it, can you or give me information about an incident, and then try to provide the context, why you need it and how you intend to use it. Like the example here on the screen it's actually very handy. And then the expectations or the output that you want. I very often, if someone gives me something and I go and look for incidents or data in logs, I like to have it back in a table format, and then I will ask for it in a table format, and I'll get it in a table format. You can also tell Security Copilot about the source. Is there a special plugin I want to use? Do I want to take this in a certain direction? I can do that as well. So I have the ability of controlling that. And we close that. So I'm going to ask it to show me the 5 latest incidents in Sentinel. And as you saw, I had used my plugins. Sentinel is one of those plugins. And Ken, this is back to the compute units. You see, I'm checking the plugins. So there's a computation here. It chose, because of what I asked and my intention, to use the Sentinel plugin, and that's the grounding we talked about. And we can do that ourselves. But anyway, so here is the incidents, and I'm going to take one of these incidents out here, and I'm going to give the prompt book a try real quick before we go to something else. So let's go to the Sentinel investigation, and I'm going to start a new session. And as you saw, I snatched the incident ID from the overview. So now I'm going to run through this prompt book here. Now, warn you, I did not check what incident this is. We don't have anything really, really malicious going on in our test environment. It's actually in pretty good shape from a security posture perspective. So this is a demonstration of how Security Copilot will take any incident that I don't know anything about yet, because I didn't check which one this is. And this is what it does. It goes through the prompt book. You see it's first on the summarization prompt. It summarizes, and it's going to continue with the other prompt here down the page here. You see it's evaluating entities associated with this incident. There might not be any entities, but that's one of the things a SOC analyst is always going to ask for. How much time do I have left, Ken, before I just want to...
I'd say about another 5 minutes or so. We did have a question about if you submit a prompt but don't have the plugin connectors enabled to provide an answer or a good answer, will Copilot tell you what should be enabled? I don't know if we know the answer. Yeah.
I haven't tried that.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, here's maybe a
Yeah, there you go.
good example there. It flashed. You see here, was it here?
Yep.
All right, so I couldn't find the plugin for the APv4 reputation score for APv4. I do not have threat intel enabled in this environment, and that is probably why it couldn't find it. So, sort of, I guess is my response here. It will hint to what it needs to finish here. Yes, it wasn't able to. Let me see here. It wasn't able to look at all the things here. It might be a permission issue for each user involved. We'll let this run for another few seconds here before I change into XDR. So this is the last step in this prompt book, though. It wasn't successful in several of these steps, but at least I get to show you the workflow and how the prompt book behaves. And then right now it's taking a summary, and you're going to see it pop out in this area here in a few seconds here.
So we have a follow-up question to the administration privileges is how do you, they typically don't give out universal rights to the tool. So how do you create the ability for this tool to eat everything without creating an Uber ID, without being a risk to themselves? Any thoughts on that, Karsten?
Yeah, no, I would consider some of the built-in rules that is in place to be able to see telemetry, security telemetry specifically, right? So security reader is a good place to start.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. The devil is in the demo here. Okay, so I'm gonna this if I had had Intune, if I had had a device, and if I had had threat intel that I don't have, this output from this demo here would have generated an incident report. Let's see back here. If I have an incident summary that is good to share here. I think maybe this one. So here is an incident summary, looking at a user account that was creating all sorts of alerts in the environment. And this is, of course, just a normal technical summary. It wasn't asked to make this an executive summary, for example. All right, so let me, in light of time here, real quick, I'm going to jump into XDR. And I have something going on in this environment that I think is such a good example of a normal day in the security analyst side. You see, I have multiple alerts going on with a Dell EV or a Dell V. So this is an account when I started looking at it, I knew nothing about it. And it presented itself into some challenges. What's also really cool about this is that since we have multiple alerts, and I have Sentinel running, the Sentinel is going to say, hey, up till whatever time this was, I think it was late last week, there was 17 alerts affecting this specific user. So now this person was involved in 17 alerts, and I'm going to create one incident, which is, of course, one of the superpowers of Sentinel, to be able to correlate and put this information together for us. So to make a demo here of something I know is going to finish the way I want it to finish for the sake of the presentation, I'm going to open this incident, and what you will see, you're going to get some data around something that looks like a malicious act from a user. You will see here, this is normal XDR stuff. The user involved with this, what services is involved, and what endpoint was involved. And if you put your attention to the right here, this is Security Copilot now working on looking at this incident. It summarized it already. And it's going to create a guided response for this. Now, mass download might not be bad. It could be bad, right? So here is the guided response. Ask the security team to send this email, out to this user and to confirm their activity. So it's a it's not a super special malicious alert I could demo here for you today, but this is a normal occurrence in a SOC. So with that, Ken, I'm going to end my demo and give it control back to you.
Awesome. So let's try to wrap things up with some final additional considerations to think about here, Carson. Can you tell us a little about these?
Yeah, I think it's good to mention a couple of considerations here. One is considering using Microsoft Copilot, in other words, not Security Copilot. If you're asking questions about general topics that does not involve your security telemetry. For example, how do I create a network security rule to prevent a remote IP address access to a service, right? That question has nothing to do with your telemetry. It has nothing to do with your security posture. So it's more of a natural language type of question, and where you can assume that a Copilot like Microsoft's has some knowledge, or actually, in many cases, very detailed knowledge about what you're asking about. We tested this and we compared Security Copilot with Microsoft Copilot. And the reason, of course, is that doesn't count against your compute units. So that's why we have it here as a consideration worth writing down.
Makes sense.
Yeah. The responsible use, I think people are getting tired of hearing about this already, but if you think about what responsible or irresponsible use can be with Security Copilot, it has information about all the known malware and tactics known to man until today. And that means that you can reverse it. You can have Security Copilot present you with examples of code that can potentially be malicious. So the responsible use of this tool is, of course, to make sure we aren't using the Security Copilot for that purpose. And the last one I already talked about. I would recommend for most customers to turn the compute units down to 1 when you have periods of less activity. And then turn it back on when you need it. And again, that is evaluated in real time, and you'll see the change. If you give it about 15 minutes, you actually see it in the billing interface in your Azure billing portal.
Excellent. All right. So for those of you that want to get started with Copilot for Security, please know it's a journey, and that Planet has 3 Copilot security offerings to help you get started and begin your journey to Copilot Security. First off, there's a security Copilot assessment workshop, which will get you an overview of the product as well as look at telemetry data to review and recommendations and roadmap. Then moving on from there, we got a pilot security Copilot, which then again talks about integrating with the telemetry of Entra and Intune, and then obviously recommendations and roadmaps. And then finally, this is where we start thinking about, deployment and production rollout, where we start integrating all the different capabilities and tools within the Microsoft ecosystem. So that's definitely powerful. So if you're interested in any of these, please reach out to your cloud strategist or account executive to set up a call to discuss. But we don't have too much time for questions, but I do want to talk about one thing that, what Copilot is and isn't at this time. Now, I put on the next screen of helpful resources, frequently asked questions link. You should definitely check it out. But one thing, that one of the questions that just hit me in the face was, can Copilot today isolate machines using Microsoft Defender for Endpoint or Intune? Can you customize or block individual indicators of compromise, things like that? And the answer is actually no. Copilot for Security can't isolate or do anything proactive on your machines. Not today. It's possibly a roadmap item. We don't know yet. It sounds like it from the way they're writing this frequently asked message. But you can evaluate whether individual IOCs are present in your environment, but Copilot is not going to automatically block them for you. So automation may come later, but not for now. Copilot for Security doesn't take remediation actions on its own. So just be aware that Copilot's really waiting for you to ask it prompts, and it's not really proactively solving your problems for you, but it's there for you and knows your environment inside and out to give you the best recommendations based on the intel that it has. So I thought that was helpful. I know there are some questions about GCC. It's not available in GCC at this time. We don't have a timeline, but it is available in commercial, and that's available right now. I think we answered the questions about access. And so when we saw things like, using guided response, it's because it's not doing remediation, right? It's giving you guides on how to fix the problems, but not actually fixing the problems for you. And that's why, when we're looking at roles to give this capability, the reader role really works well because it doesn't need, the ability to change anything. So reader roles definitely help with that question that came up about not wanting to give it an Uber role, right? As far as at least making changes. Any other questions? Oh yeah, there's a question that make sure that if you want to use Copilot, obviously you got to make sure that some of these tools are turned on, like Sentinel, XDR, Intune, all these things. The more tools you have turned on, the better together the story is, obviously, for Copilot Security to understand what's going on in your environment. So, Microsoft integrated these tools for a reason. This is the reason now with this AI-enabled Copilot for Security. Are there third-party integrations available today? Microsoft is working on them. They're in public preview. I know some customers that we work with have Tanium. They are working on that. I believe it's in public preview, so be on the lookout for that as we move forward, as Microsoft moves forward with the roadmap on this.
Let me shoot in a quick comment about that.
Sure.
So even though this is also where it becomes interesting how you integrate your security telemetry, right? So if you're using Tanium or Prisma Cloud, right? If you have ability to read the security logs, you can use Security Copilot also towards those logs, right? The logs would typically then be ingested, for example, to Log Analytics, and then will be available via the Sentinel plugin. But yes, Microsoft is working on the plugins or integration of more of the threat intel companies out there.
Excellent. Yes, the recording will be available and sent to all who were registered for the event. I believe at this time it's not going to be bundled into E5 or G5. We haven't heard anything about that. It sounds like it's a standalone SKU, just like some of these other Copilot capabilities that we're seeing here. All right. If we haven't gotten to your question, we'll definitely follow up with the follow-up email that goes out. Again, a lot of the questions you're asking about GCC and third-party products, they're all answered in this frequently asked questions link here. So definitely take a look at that. There's a lot of other great ones here that Carson's dug up for you to check out and start learning about the product. Just a reminder that our next You Already Own It office hours will be on May 23rd at 1 o'clock, as always, the fourth Thursday of the month. If you have a topic that you'd like to discuss with us, please put it in the chat window or reach out to your account team. Just a reminder that all the benefits of the You Already Own It program are available to you and free, so please reach out to your account team to get them started and set up. We're having great success with our Power Platform new benefits that were just announced, so definitely take a look at those if you're looking for any information on Power Platform licensing, fundamentals of Power Platform, deep dive on Power Platform. That is the newest ones that we've added to the workshop list, so make sure you take a look at that and reach out to Michelle McGraw. Finally, we'd love to know how we did today. Please give us a rating if you can. Again, this is all anonymous. Well, that's a wrap. I want to thank Karsten and, of course, all of you for joining us today. We hope you found the office hours helpful and better understanding what Copilot for Security can do for your organization. As always, if you want additional information or a one-on-one, reach out to your cloud strategist or account executive. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.